Hello, you're watching the Tropics Topics of July 6th, 2018. It's been a little while since we made a video like this. All of June was pretty inactive in the Atlantic, but now activity has since risen again. Today we'll be discussing not one, but two systems active in the Atlantic. The first is Hurricane Beryl. Yes, you heard that right, Hurricane Beryl, which has winds of 80 miles an hour and a pressure of 994 millibars. It makes it a Category 1 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, and the other being MS 96L, which has a high chance of development, 70% in the next 48 hours and 80% in the next 5 days, as it looms off the North Carolina coast. We'll get into detail on both the systems, but first let's kind of look at a wide shot of the Atlantic today. You can see here's Beryl right here, and here is 96L, and you can see all the other stuff going on in the Atlantic right now. So first, let's get into Beryl. Beryl formed yesterday as a tropical depression at a pretty far south latitude, and has since, because of its extremely small size, which you can see here in this satellite loop, it has been able to really get going at a pretty unusual location at a pretty unusual time of year. It is a very small hurricane. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's in the running for some of the smallest storms we've really ever seen in the basin. Last I checked, the gale radius was about 40 nautical miles, which is very small for storms such as this. And you can see in this loop, you can see kind of an eye popping in and out of the imagery. That's why we've been designating it as a hurricane. But you can see in the last few frames, it's kind of disintegrating a little bit. That happens with smaller tropical systems. This is a very small storm. It's a very fragile storm. So as a result, it's going to fluctuate up and down with, just whatever oscillations that the atmosphere has to throw at it. And it's at a very sweet spot right now, because we go back to, this satellite loop here, you can see that it's connected, it generated off of a tropical wave that moved through the intertropical convergence zone and just kind of broke off and is now its own entity, but it's really benefiting for being at such a low latitude and really close to the intertropical convergence zone, because to the north in the main area of the main development region, you see all this dry Saharan air just flowing from Africa all the way into the Caribbean, and we can see that on this shot from Simis here. You can see all this, these yellows, reds, and even pinks show a lot of really high, dust concentrations in the atmosphere, and you can see that Beryl is just on the edge. You can see down here it's pretty dust free, but up here it's the Atlantic. This is normal for the Atlantic, but this year the Saharan air layer has just been a bit more vigorous than normal. So it's certainly interesting to see something like Beryl pop up, but it just formed at a sweet spot at a fairly low latitude. Now, as this continues to progress towards the west, it is forecast currently by the National Hurricane Center to continue intensifying into a Category 2 hurricane before it eventually hits some more hostile conditions. Because if we look at the GFS model, here's the storm right here, this L, the 997 millibars. This is Beryl, and you could see that it has some sort of upper level structure. This is 200 millibar winds. These are basically winds at the upper part of the troposphere, and as this continues to progress westward on this model, you can see that it does have this upper ridge pretty strong, but you can also see that there's that because it's going to be moving faster, because we have this ridge up here that's going to be really start at the surface, that's really going to be pumping in those trade winds a lot faster. So and you can see that Beryl is going to be moving at a really fast pace here. You can see this jotting pretty far. That's a distance of about a pretty good distance within just 12 hours as it moves through the Lesser Antilles and weakens as it does so. The current National Hurricane Center forecast suggests that this is going to go all the way to Hispaniola, but we'll get there in a minute. Shear is going to really rip this apart, because you have what we call a Tutlow tropical upper troposphere trough, which is going to really just kind of gut the storm as it moves in this general direction. Also, right now, that's one of the factors. The other factor is kind of sea surface temperatures are pretty cool. They're much cooler than average in the main development region this season. Right now, or they are at least. You can see it's kind of dip right here. This was generated by Beryl itself. The storm is over here, so it's going to be moving over warmer sea surface temperatures. But as it gets into these really warm waters in the Eastern Caribbean, it's going to be falling apart due to other sort of factors. And some of the models are predicting that it will move to the Lesser Antilles as some form of a tropical storm. This is the HWRF model showing a storm moving through near Dominica and Martinique. Mostly not really likely to be a big wind maker, mostly just bringing some rain and squally weather to these islands. Here's a National Hurricane Center forecast track showing the storm progressing, to the west northwest as it's under the influence of this ridge up here, and then moving through the islands. Excuse me, not this model. This is kind of showing that it might move through as a hurricane. This point right here shows 85 knots, which is 100 miles an hour. And this point right here is 70 miles an hour, or 60 knots. So in between, it might be moving through as a minimal hurricane, but that's to be seen right now. More updates will come on the storm in the next few days on this channel, just to kind of just to deliver updates on the situation in the Lesser Antilles. So yeah, that's Beryl. We'll have more updates on her in the future. But for the rest of this video, we're going to be focusing on Invest 96L, which is located over here, as we mentioned, 70% in the next 5 days, 70% next 2 days, 80% in the next 5 days, chances for tropical cyclone genesis. So if we look at the satellite imagery here, here's a beautiful 1 minute shot from SSEC, and from the GO-16 satellite. You can see it's a pretty broad system. It's dealing with some, sorry about that, it's dealing with some issues though. You can see that the circulation is pretty broad, and that the convection it's being sheared. You can't really see it as well in this run because it's a 1 minute loop, but you can definitely see here that these clouds right here are being kind of pushed a little bit they're being pushed towards the west as an influence of this upper low. We'll show more of that in a minute. And this is moving slowly towards the northwest. The steering currents in this area are pretty light, and that's going to be kind of the situation for 96L for the next couple of days, which is going to lead to some forecasting challenges, but we'll see how it eventually ends up. You can see here that convection it has convection in the center. Yesterday it was a pretty naked circulation, pretty high environmental pressures. Pressures are still pretty high in this area. Concerning this huge ridge up here, which is also kind of drying out the atmosphere. You can see all these clouds up here that are trying to develop into thunderstorms, but are just not able to because the atmosphere is just too dry. And then this is going to continue moving towards the northwest and then meander off the coast of North Carolina. Because here, if we look at the upper level, the water vapor shot, you can see here that we have a couple of things going on. We have this upper low over here off the coast of Georgia and northern Florida that is inducing all the shear on the storm right now, in addition to this really big ridge over here to the north of Bermuda that's inducing all these high environmental pressures. Yesterday it had a pressure of 1,021 millibars, which is really, really high for an invest like this, or even an invest. And as you can see, this low is progressing towards the west, so it eventually will lead to more of a favorable shear environment for the system to really get going. But you can also see here that there's this trough, this front moving in through the eastern United States. This is going to drape down into this portion of the basin and kind of fizzle out, and it can do a number of things to this storm. If we kind of bigger shot here, we can see that this is our front right here. Here's our storm. And assuming that it comes down here, and the storm is right here, then it will be able to there's going to be shear with it either way, so it's going to be kind of being, sheared kind of like this. But that's sort of counterintuitive right now. We don't really know exactly what's going to be happening. But what we do know is that as this is here, it's going to kind of shut off the steering currents and make this kind of meander. And in addition, there's going to be a ridge over here over the Midwest, and then another ridge over here. So these kind of two flows right here are going to oppose and kind of cause the storm just to kind of stop moving in the middle. There's always an area of weak steering currents in the middle of two ridges. So this is going to kind of meander off the coast of North Carolina, probably develop into a tropical storm, and then in the future we're going to have this other trough come in out of Canada and move and dip into the northeast United States, kind of reinduce a southwest flow, and then this thing can kind of just kick out kind of like that. But the forecast is still pretty uncertain. Yesterday models were kind of showing it doing something like that because they were assuming that it wouldn't be all the way down here, it would be all the way up here, and that this, this front right here would be able to pick it up and force it out to sea. That's not the case. It's too far away now because it's kind of coming in kind of like that from Bermuda and is now kind of in this spot where it's kind of stuck in the middle and can't really do much else. And if it really meanders in this area right here, we're going to have to watch it because it's going to bring some, squally weather to North Carolina, blustery winds, gusty rain, like gusty conditions. Basically everything you'll see with the tropical cyclone. You can see that here on the model. Here where it becomes a bona fide tropical storm. This is by Monday. In fact, it could even happen before that at this rate. And it kind of meanders in this area. You can see that pretty well. And then kind of intensifies towards the end of the run, but we'll pay less attention to that because by that time it'll be kicking on out to sea because you will have this trough kind of dipping in and pulling it out. But we'll see exactly what's going on. The forecast, again, is a really big challenge right now. We don't really know exactly what's going to be happening with this, less so than usual. So pay extra attention to the forecast from the National Hurricane Center, as advisories may need to be issued for the coasts of North Carolina and South Carolina in the next couple of days, as a tropical storm is possible. There's very likely that there will be a tropical storm off the coast of North Carolina by this point and early next week. So we will just need to watch this. Currently, again, 80% chance of development in the next 5 days. So development is likely. And if this were to get a name, the next name on the list is Chris. So it would be named Chris if it did get to that status. So that's basically it for the tropics today. I'll have more updates coming as the whole situation progresses. Again, we're watching Beryl, currently an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane, very small hurricane, moving towards the Lesser Antilles. Could impact them as a weakening storm, but still could bring significant impacts to those islands, and then eventually likely to dissipate towards Hispaniola as it starts to interact with land and additional shear. We're also, and again, Invest 96L, moving towards the coast of the Carolinas, likely meandering off the shore for a couple of days, but again, forecast is a bit uncertain, so we'll just have to wait and see with that storm. Alright, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to stay weather alert during this time.